Hello, YouTube world, and welcome to my channel, Curls and Culture, where we're either talking about curls or culture. I'm Takia Shamit, and today we're doing a mukbang, and we're going to be doing another Korean dish. It's going to be black bean noodles with a couple of dumplings and a fried egg on top. I also have here a Korean scallion pancake, just rolled up. And then I also have just some pickles. Some pickles they're super sour, so I put a little honey on them. And then for my drink today, I'm going to be having a blue energy drink to rehydrate and restore. And today is all about culture. If you're interested in a video about curls, you'll see one either right now or shortly after about a new hair tool I got. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can click on the hair video. But today's video is going to be a mukbang, and we're going to be talking about culture, and specifically we're going to be talking about appropriation. It's something that has been popping up a lot lately in our culture, and I think it needs some clarification, and so I want to dig into that. Before we dig into the topic, let's dig into this yummy food. So, if you're not familiar with black bean noodles, it is a Korean dish. It is made from black bean soy paste, and it has some potatoes in it. Sometimes it can have meat in it, cabbage, squash. A lot of times there's cucumbers on the top. I actually have scallions here, and then there's some pork dumplings. And so the sauce goes on top, and then you mix it all around. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna bust open this delicious, yummy egg here. I don't know if you can see the egg, and it's running. And we're going to go ahead and mix it up. The noodles tend to be on the thicker side. I don't have any meat in today's dish. This is actually the sauce that comes in the package, and you boil it and you pour it right on top of the noodles. And then I have the dumplings. There is meat in the dumplings. These are pork dumplings. And I'm just going to use the sauce of the black bean noodles for my dumplings as well. And so let's get right into today's topic. But before we get into today's topic, let's get into a nice bite of this yummy food. Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-mm-mm. Guys, that's yummy. Mm-mm-mm. Mm. Mm-mm-mm. Mm. It's really, really yummy. Hmm. It's delicious. It really, really is. Mm. Mm, mm, mm. Mm. The flavor is like, it's savory, very savory, a little bit, mm, like, let me see. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I guess for lack of a better description, I want to say it's just, you can tell, I don't know if that's sesame oil. There's a very distinct Korean flavor to it, but it's very savory. It's very delicious. I really enjoy it. This is my first time having this brand. Um, I've had the brand where it comes in these cubes and you kind of make the sauce yourself, almost like a bouillon cube. But this, the sauce was already in the package. You boil the package and you just pour it all over the noodles, and it's really, really good. So let's talk about appropriation. I tend to think that folks really don't understand the definition of appropriation. And the reason why I feel that way is because, it's a word, excuse me, that has been tossed around quite a bit lately. I want to say the biggest culprits of appropriation in our culture today would be the Kardashians, right? Like, a lot of times things come out with the Kardashians, whether or not they are creating a new clothing line or if they have a new name for a new makeup or just in their everyday lives, if they're doing some type of photo shoot, they're constantly being accused of appropriation. And because of that, if someone else does something, another celebrity does something that can be considered appropriation, a lot of the Kardashian stands will really go hard on that other celebrity and say, okay, but if this was the Kardashians, you all would say X, Y, and Z. And what I'm noticing is that I think that people really don't have a good grasp or understanding of what appropriation even means. The definition in Webster is very basic, very simple. It simply states that appropriation means using something from someone's culture without permission, right? Without their knowledge, without them being recognized for it, without, if it's a purchase, it's like without them getting paid for it. That is basically what Webster says. Now, that's my own words. That's not the definition word for word, but that's basically what Webster says appropriation is. So I want to be very clear about that because appropriation is not when someone outside of a specific culture wears something from that culture. That's not what it is. Appropriation is not me sitting here doing a mukbang as a African American woman eating Korean food. This is not appropriation. Appropriation is specifically, if you were to go to Forever, or I'm sorry, Appropriation is specifically if you were to go to a store and purchase something. Let's say, you know, African pattern shirts are really popular these days, right? Dashiki like shirts, um, shirts that have African print on them. It's very popular. If you go to a store and you purchase the shirt, and it's not a shirt that was created by an African designer, it's not a shirt that's sold in an African store, um, and you're wearing it and you're not African, that's appropriation. Appropriation is if you go to the gas station and you buy a feather that looks to be a Native American design, whether it's a keychain or a necklace, and it's at a, Asian or all white owned gas station in the middle of Tennessee, that's appropriation. So appropriation is you wearing something or doing something from another culture, and it that culture is not being compensated, acknowledged, praised, for that specific thing that you're wearing or doing. So the reason why the Kardashians are constantly being ridiculed or accused of appropriation is because what they do is in fact appropriation. So for example, there were a few years ago that the Jenner sisters, um, they created this shirt line, and it was shirts of very famous musicians, and then they would plaster their faces, their images, their bodies on top of the image of the artist. For example, there was Biggie Smalls, a very famous African American rapper that I'm sure I didn't have to put the description out for, but just in case you've never heard of him. And it wasn't just hip hop artists; it was rock and roll artists, um, and the family of these artists, if the artists were no longer living, or the artists themselves, if they were living, were never notified about these, never asked if they could produce these shirts with their images on them. They never received any compensation for the selling of these t-shirts. That is indeed considered appropriation. And Biggie Smalls' mother was very, very upset about this. Appropriation is also, I believe it was Kim Kardashian. She was coming out with a new product line, and she wanted to call it like kimchi or um, something from the Asian culture. I'll put it in the description box, but it was very much appropriation. No one from the culture had been asked. There was no compensation. The product itself had nothing to do with Asian culture. And that is indeed considered appropriation. Now, a few years ago, my fiance went to India for work, and he bought back a sari for me. And for those of you who may not know what a sari is, it's basically a very large piece of material with patterns created and designed by Indians in India. Very colorful pieces that are wrapped into what we would call a dress, maybe. They're very traditional. You see Indian women walking around with them on all the time. They wear them specifically very fancy ones they would wear to like weddings or celebrations. And it is a part of the Indian culture. It is their traditional attire. And he brought me one back from India. And it's beautiful. I absolutely love it. I have never ever worn it. Now, I'll tell you this. At one point, I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I can get this turned into a dress or a skirt or some really cool wide leg pants. And someone said to me, that I don't think that's a good idea. That is meant to be a part of the Indian tradition, and you would take it and turn it into something else. And I don't think that that is very respectful. And I do think that sometimes appropriation can be left up to interpretation at some levels. There is a little bit of room for interpretation, but I think overall, if you feel like it may not be right, then you should go with your gut about that. And it was something I never thought about in that light, but I agreed with that person. My son was going to a daycare a few years ago, and the director happened to be an Indian woman. And I told her that I had a siren. And that my fiance had brought it back for me from India. And guys, she was ecstatic. She was so excited that he had gone to India. Excuse me. So excited that he had brought this sari back for me that she asked me to bring it in so that she could show me how to wear it. So I did. One day, I was off from work. I dropped my son off at daycare. I had the sari. She took me in a private room and she wrapped me beautifully in the sari. She taught me how to wear it. She told me if I wanted to ever wear it, a perfect place to wear it was an Indian wedding. That if I got invited to an Indian wedding, that I should absolutely wear this sari. That it would pay homage to their culture. The family would be very pleased by it. And it was the perfect place to wear it. This is an Indian woman telling me this. Telling me to wear her traditional garment to an Indian wedding. And that it would totally be appropriate. And it would not be appropriation. She was giving me permission to wear it. Excuse me. She was excited that I had it. She was touched that I wanted to wear it and that I allowed her to show me how to wear it. That, guys, is not appropriation. It came from India. It was authentic. I think that's the thing that really matters, in my opinion, is the authenticity of the item. Did it come directly from that culture? Was it created by the culture? Did the culture give you permission to wear it? to say it, to do it. I think that is what really matters when it comes to appropriation. Not too long ago, a few months ago, Rihanna, I'll put somewhere in this video, I'll put the picture up. But she did a beautiful, beautiful photo shoot. And it was paying homage to Asian culture. It was a photo shoot that was for Vogue for that particular country. And I can't recall the country. I should have done my research first. My apologies. But it was an Asian country. And, excuse me, it was a beautiful photo shoot that was directed and shot by people of that culture. That she was dressed and designed by people of that culture. It was for their edition of Vogue. They gave her permission. And people ridiculed her and criticized her and said that it was appropriation. And it was specifically a lot of Kardashian stans that said if this was one of them, you all would be shouting appropriation. The main thing to remember when it comes to the Kardashians is a lot of times when they're doing things, they have no permission from that culture that they are trying to represent to do it. No permission. A lot of times they don't even care to ask for permission. A lot of times I'm sure they don't even think to ask for permission. And that is the piece that is missing. Rihanna was not appropriating. And I've heard so many different people with commentary on it that really have no idea whether or not she's appropriating or not. And she's not. I think I heard it on the radio and they really didn't know. And I think that's where my frustration began to come in, is that it's so simple to look up the definition. It's so simple to really figure out if indeed this is appropriation. In our culture today, we use words, we don't know what they mean. We say things and we're not really sure about it. And then it becomes golden, it becomes fact. And you know, in a sensitive time that we live in today, I think it's really important to get facts straight. I think it's really, really important to acknowledge if we've made a mistake or if we're wrong about something, or if we didn't ask for permission, or if we didn't realize that something was appropriation or whatever, to just say that, to just state it, to just be honest about it, and then move on. And I think that the lack of sensitivity that some folks have towards folks' culture is a problem. And I think that it is a beautiful thing for us to want to learn about each other's culture, for us to want to dress from each other's culture, eat food from each other's culture. I think that's a beautiful. But I think it's equally important to pay homage to that said culture. If need be, ask for permission. Do a little extra homework to make sure that it's authentic. and to do your very best to just be sensitive to each other. Um, and that's really all I have to say about appropriation. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts on appropriation. Let me know your interpretation. Let me know if you've ever appropriated before and was called out for it and how you handled it. I would love to get a conversation going about culture, appropriation, and I would love to be educated and taught about things that I don't know. I would love to try food, clothing. I would just love to learn. Let's learn together. So, thank you all for tuning in today. I am just about finished here. So, I'm going to take this dumpling here. Mm-hmm. I apologize for all the background noises going on today. Apparently, there's a lot going on outside. Last little bit here of this scallion pancake. If you like what you heard today, please comment, give me a thumbs up, subscribe. I apologize about the uncensoredness of this video. I feel like it's happening. But thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Stick with me. I promise it gets greater later. Until next time, see you later.